The canyon was quiet, too quiet. Wind swept through the red rock like a whisper from the dead. The cowboy's horse snorted, uneasy, catching a scent that didn't belong to sand or sage. Then he saw her. Down by the dry creek bed, 5 men stood around a figure bound to a post, a young Apache girl, wrists raw from rope, blood streaked down her arms where she'd fought to break free. Her dark hair tangled in the wind, her face proud despite the bruises. The men laughed, cruel and careless, as if the desert itself approved. The cowboy's hand moved to his holster without thought. The sun glinted off his revolver's steel. One of the men turned just as the first shot rang out. Dust exploded, a man fell, and the girl's eyes snapped open, wide, defiant, alive. He'd just changed both their lives. The echoes of the gunshot rolled through the canyon like thunder. The men scattered, shouting, fumbling for cover. The cowboy fired twice more, clean, deliberate shots. When the dust cleared, 2 lay still, the rest fled into the rocks. His breath came slow and steady. He holstered his weapon and dismounted, boots crunching on gravel. The girl hadn't moved. Her chest rose and fell quick, her eyes burning with something fierce. Fear, anger, maybe both. He cut her ropes. She didn't thank him. Instead, she staggered to her feet, shoulders square despite the tremble in her legs. "You can go," he said, voice low. She looked at him for the first time, the sunset reflecting in her eyes. Then she turned away, walking barefoot into the desert, her step sure and stubborn. The cowboy watched her fade into the heat shimmer. He wasn't done with her, though he didn't know it yet. Night fell hard over the desert. The cowboy built a small fire beside his horse, its light flickering across his face, cutting deep into the lines that time and guilt had carved there. The girl's image wouldn't leave him, the ropes, the blub, the defiance in her eyes. He told himself it wasn't his concern. He'd done his part, she'd gone her way, but the thought of her wandering alone through the dark gnawed at him like hunger. He poured coffee from his tin pot and stared into the flames. They danced like memories he'd tried to bury. His sister's face, pale and still, taken years ago on another raid. He'd failed her. He'd sworn never again. The fire popped, a sound sharp as gunfire. His horse lifted its head, ears twitching east. Somewhere out there, a coyote howled, and he knew he'd ride before dawn. By mid-morning, the town shivered in the heat, one dusty street lined with false front buildings and eyes that watched from behind curtains. The cowboy rode in slow, reins loose. Behind him, the Apache girl walked barefoot, head high, despite the stairs that cut like knives. He dismounted outside the saloon. Conversations died as he pushed through the swinging doors. "She needs water and rest," he said simply. The barkeep's hand froze on a glass. "Not here," he muttered. From the corner a voice spat, "We don't serve her kind." The girl didn't flinch. Her chin lifted a fraction, pride glowing like embers under ash. The cowboy's jaw tightened. "You'll serve her," he said quietly. His hand hovered near his holster, calm but certain. No one moved. Finally, a glass of water slid down the bar. She drank in silence, surrounded by hate and dust, and for the first time, she wasn't alone in it. They left town before the sun dipped low, neither saying a word. The air between them was thick with what wasn't spoken, gratitude, pride, and something raw neither dared name. By nightfall, they stopped near a dry creek bed. The cowboy unsaddled his horse and started a small fire. The girl sat apart, her knees pulled close, eyes fixed on the flames. He placed a tin plate beside her, beans and cornbread. She didn't reach for it. He didn't press. After a moment, she slid the plate closer and began to eat, slow and careful. When she was done, she whispered something in her own tongue, soft, musical, foreign to his ear. He nodded anyway. "You're welcome," he said quietly. For the first time, she looked at him without defiance, just tired honesty. They shared no stories, no names beyond what had been given, but something unspoken passed between them. Trust, fragile as smoke. The wind came first, hot, restless, carrying the scent of rain and trouble. By dusk, the horizon flashed with distant lightning. They found shelter beneath a rocky ledge, the storm rolling closer, the sky growling like a wounded beast. She shivered, sweat glistening on her skin despite the cold wind. Calderon, he hadn't told her his name yet, but she knew it now, touched her forehead. Fever. Bad. He built a fire, small but steady, feeding it with dry sage. She mumbled words in Apache, caught between worlds. He soaked a rag, pressed it against her brow, and whispered, "Easy now, you're safe." Rain began to fall in sheets, drumming the earth. He sat beside her through the night, his poncho draped over her trembling body. When dawn finally broke, her fever had eased. She slept quietly, her hand resting near his, and for the first time, he allowed himself to hope. They rode again by sunrise, the storm washed clean behind them. The girl's color had returned, but her silence carried weight. Calderon knew better than to ask questions. Some stories didn't need telling to be true. By mid-noon, the stillness broke. A rifle cracked across the plains. The bullet hissed past his ear, biting into the dust ahead. He spun his horse hard, scanning the ridge. 3 riders, the same men, or what was left of them. Revenge had found its trail. "Down!" he shouted, pulling her from the saddle as another shot rang out. They rolled behind a fallen log, his revolver already smoking. She grabbed his spare rifle without hesitation, aiming steady despite the fear in her eyes. She fired. One rider dropped. Calderon finished the other. The third turned tail, vanishing into the heat haze. When the gunfire faded, he looked at her, really looked at her. The wild Apache girl had just fought beside him. Smoke still hung in the air, the sharp smell of gunpowder mixing with sweat and dust. Calderon holstered his revolver and knelt beside her. Blood streaked her arm where a bullet had grazed her. She didn't flinch as he tore a strip from his sleeve and wrapped it tight. "You'll live," he muttered. Her lips pressed into a thin line. "You too." Their eyes met, steady, raw, stripped of all pretense. In that silence, understanding took root. He wasn't her savior, and she wasn't his burden. They were 2 souls carved by pain, surviving the same world that had tried to break them. When the bandage was done, she touched his hand briefly, a gesture small but sure. "My name," she said softly, "Ayana." Calderon nodded. "Then we start fresh, Ayana." For the first time, the wind through the grass didn't sound lonely. It sounded like promise. The next town lay 2 days north, across open prairie where the grass swayed like an ocean of gold. Calderon rode slow, letting Ayana's horse keep pace beside his. The silence between them had changed. It wasn't distance anymore. It was calm. At a trading post along the trail, she paused before a rack of fabric, her fingers brushing a crimson shawl. The color burned bright against the dust and sun-bleached world. Calderon saw her glance toward him, uncertain. He said nothing, just nodded once. She lifted it gently, wrapping it around her shoulders. "It's beautiful," she said, almost shy. He smiled faintly. "It suits you." That night, as they camped under the stars, the firelight caught the red fabric, fluttering softly in the wind. It looked alive, like a flame refusing to die. For Calderon, it became a symbol, not of rescue, but of rebirth. They camped near the foothills that night, the stars sharp as glass above. Calderon leaned against his saddle, staring into the fire, while Ayana sat close, the red shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders. For a long time only the wind spoke. Then she said, quietly, "You remind me of someone." He turned, one brow raised. "My brother," she continued.
They took him when I was small, men like those we fought. Her voice trembled, but she didn't look away. He never came back. Calderon's jaw tightened. I lost someone too, my sister, taken in a raid years ago. Their eyes met across the fire. Two memories, two wounds, bound by the same cruelty of the frontier. Ayana's voice softened. We carry ghosts, you and I. He nodded. Maybe that's why we found each other. The fire cracked between them, but something else burned brighter. Understanding and the beginning of peace. By dawn, the air was heavy, the kind that warned of violence. They had followed the river south, its bends leading them toward a canyon rimmed with jagged stone. Calderon halted, eyes narrowing. Fresh tracks, too many. Before he could speak, gunfire split the